I think there's a really big opportunity for public bodies, including councils and others, to act in a more commercial way. And the thing I'm particularly interested in is commercialisation of assets, so building income streams or businesses from publicly owned assets to help to pay for public services, which, as we know, are under enormous financial pressure. Yeah, so a lot of organisations in the public sector are already making money from their assets in different ways, and there are some great examples out there. I'll give you a couple of examples of things Capita are doing with public bodies in partnership, which I think is an interesting model. For example, we have a joint venture that we set up with the Cabinet Office in central government, which is building a business around some intellectual property that they owned, and is now owned by the joint venture, and we're contributing some people and investing along with some folk who've transferred over to build and grow a business that is generating a return for them as well as for us. And that business owns Prince2, which is project management best practice. It owns ITIL, which is IT service management best practice, and it owns some other good practice as well. And it's licensing that intellectual property all over the world, actually, and receives an income from people doing exams and doing training and other things. And we're planning to triple the value of that business over 10 years. And in fact, it's just reported its first year of profits of £12 million, and more than 10 of which are going back to the public sector, actually, as their return. So it's going really well. I think it's a good example of a partnership model where each side brings complementary capabilities, and together we can build something that we probably neither of us could do on our own. So I think different structures can be used to create partnerships to commercially develop assets. In the example of Axelos, which is the name of this one, we have a formal legal entity, joint venture company, which Capita owns 51% of, and the Cabinet Office owns the other 49% of. And it owns the intellectual property. It was transferred over from the Cabinet Office after an open competition. So it's a standalone company, really, which is developing that intellectual property and commercially developing the business based on it around the world. So another example of a kind of asset that can be commercially developed is real estate, and many councils and other public bodies own property of various kinds. We have a number of partnerships actually where we're working with public bodies both to cut costs but also to generate income from property. One example is a partnership that Capita has with the Defence Infrastructure Organisation, who effectively own the MOD's estate, which is 1% of the UK landmass. And in that partnership, we're helping to reduce the costs of their supply chain that service the estate, but we're also finding ways to commercially develop some of the land. So, for example, we've just installed a solar farm on a disused airfield to generate an income and electricity. We're also identifying opportunities where land is either surplus already or potentially could become surplus if we consolidated the users into a single place, for example, and freed up some land that could then be developed or turned into a different use. And that helps to generate potentially income streams as well as capital receipts for the public purse. I think there are quite a wide range of different sorts of assets that can be commercially developed, from intellectual property to real estate to trading businesses. And I think it's about picking the right model for each one. I don't think there's a standard answer to what the right approach is. Where I'd start actually is not with a legal structure, it's with the capabilities that are needed to be successful. So what people, what skills, what money, what relationships, what else is needed to make the development of a business work, and then from there consider the right model. And in some cases public bodies are doing a great job of doing things on their own. In other cases I think that there's a benefit from bringing in a commercial partner who's got deeper commercial expertise, for example, and experience of growing businesses to work together. Sometimes that can be done in a formal joint venture, sometimes it can be done under a contract kind of a structure. There are a variety of models, and I think it's about working through in each case what the right answer is. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer. So there are a range of different kinds of assets that public bodies own and can provide the foundation for building an income stream or a business. And if I just run through some examples, so real estate is an obvious one, and there are all kinds of different properties that people own, and they can be developed and turned into new kinds of properties, clearly. Intellectual property is an interesting category, I think, and actually sometimes quite difficult to spot, but that can take the form of best practice, a bit like Prince 2, which is part of the joint venture that we have. It could be data, and I know there are lots of one has to be cautious about commercially developing data, but there are opportunities there. It could be things like software, and obviously many people have built very successful businesses based on software. And I know a number of local authorities actually have some really very good software, sometimes which they're already beginning to trade with. A final category would be sort of trading entities, trading businesses, which are already charging for services, but could do more and could become a bit more commercial and could develop additional income streams, for example, or change their pricing or innovate and enter new markets. So I think there are at least those three categories in real estate, intellectual property and trading assets. There may be others as well. And I think it's about spotting the asset, actually, because sometimes that's not that obvious. Sometimes it's sort of hidden or it's used for a different purpose. And then thinking through the right model and the right people and the right way to build a business that generates the income that helps to pay for public services. So I think identifying assets that an organisation owns can be quite difficult. Some are quite obvious. I mean, clearly real estate one can walk into and find, although actually we do find examples where people have slightly lost track of all of their assets, so doing a kind of a thorough audit is a good start for real estate. I think where we're talking about traded services, we can look at things that are already generating income streams for a council or another body and consider what in addition could be done and developed and created off the back of that. Where we're looking at intellectual property, I think sometimes it's a more difficult thing to spot the opportunity to create a business because that intellectual property may not be widely recognised, it may be tacit, it may not be fully documented, its value may not be easy to identify. So actually I think that's about having conversations with people who are experts and working through things to consider the value that those intellectual property assets could have to other people, and then starting from there in thinking through how to turn that into an income stream in a business.